Energy with a very special episode about the Milton Berle episode of The Muppet Show. Hi-ho, everyone. This is David Levy. Welcome back. I am so thrilled to be here today with...
Christy Bauer.
Michal Richardson.
Adam Grossworth. We are here this week with no preamble to talk about Season 2, Episode 3 of The Muppet Show. This episode was produced the week of June 9th, 1977. It did not air in New York City until November 14th, 1977. So it was the 9th episode aired of Season 2.
To introduce our guest star, that's what I'm here to do. So it really makes me happy to introduce to you
Milton Berle, known to fans as both Uncle Milty and Mr. Television, had a career that spanned silent pictures, vaudeville, radio, talkies, nightclubs, and yes, television. His career literally spanned from The Perils of Pauline to Kenan and Kel. Born Milton Berlinger in New York on July 12, 1908, Berle got his start in vaudeville at age 10, and before long was also playing child roles in silent movies. He tried to make the leap to radio in the 1940s, but he found limited success there. Meanwhile, he was honing his grown-up act on the nightclub scene, where he learned that he didn't need to write his own material to put across a great act. His physicality was a big part of his appeal, which might be what made him not a great fit for radio. He began methodically collecting every joke he could get his hands on, eventually amassing a joke file he claimed held more than 4 million jokes. He did have something of a reputation as a joke thief, but he also had an incredible memory, and he was able to deploy these jokes really on a moment's notice, which made him an excellent comedian for crowd work, which we'll get a taste of in this episode, sort of. He also had a reputation for having one of the largest penises in Hollywood, but that's neither here nor there. In 1947, he founded the Friars Club of Beverly Hills at the Old Savoy Hotel on Sunset Boulevard, along with Jimmy Durante, George Jessel, Robert Taylor, and Bing Crosby. He was a frequent participant in the famous Friars Club roasts, and you can still hear a bunch of them on the internet, on YouTube, and on Spotify. His breakthrough success came in 1948 as the star of Texaco Star Theater, a comedy variety show on NBC. Some credit the success of this show with not only making Milton Berle's career, but also with cementing the success of television with the American public. Berle was so beloved that in 1951, NBC signed him to a 30-year contract just to ensure he wouldn't get snatched away by a rival network. The show would eventually be renamed The Milton Berle Show, and it ran until 1956 for a total of 8 years. NBC would twice attempt to revive it in 1958 and again in 1966, although neither of those versions lasted more than a single season. Berle won the Emmy for Most Outstanding Kinescoped Personality in 1950. In 1979, he was awarded a special Emmy Award titled Mr. Television. He was twice nominated for Emmys for his acting as well in 1962 and 1995. By the time he was on The Muppet Show, Milton Berle had basically settled into the phase of his career where he would make guest star appearances on a few television series each year, and given the longevity of his career, it might be shorter to list the shows he didn't visit. He worked pretty consistently up through the mid-1990s. He made a few more movies over his later years as well, including a memorable cameo in the Muppet movie as Madman Mooney. But he wasn't called Mr. Television for nothing. Berle was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 1984. His final credit was as Uncle Leo in the made-for-TV movie Kenan and Kel, Two Heads Are Better Than None in the year 2000, 86 years after his first film credit. He died in March 2002. In getting ready for this episode, I went online and asked my friends what they recommend as sort of the quintessential Milton Berle performances, because I felt like I knew him more by reputation than from any particular performance. And I think that's because really most of certainly his career during my lifetime was almost entirely these guest appearances. And even in the week that we were getting ready to record this, he popped up on an episode of The Nanny that I was watching. But I'm curious if any of you have specific Milton Berle associations or memories.
I actually do. I think of Milton Berle as being the quintessential figure of the lost monoculture that we talk about a lot. I don't think we have a figure quite like him today. It's fascinating to me because our culture is so fragmented. Our pop culture is so fragmented, I should say. And I really racked my brain, and I could think of actors from movies that are a huge deal, but nobody that has that sort of like multi-generational.
I feel like Rosie O'Donnell was on track to do that. And then when she ended her talk show, she chose to sort of retreat back into something closer to a normal life and kind of gave that up.
Well, or like
Yeah.
Oprah,
Yeah, but even
but it's different,
Oprah's not an entertainer,
right?
you know. Because I was also thinking, I was like, I mean, the like James Corden, like
Ugh.
yeah, no,
Each of these comparisons is rougher than the next.
right. We're digging a hole, but the sort of talk show late night person who also pops up in cameo ways, but even that I think doesn't scratch the surface of. And again, that's because there were only 2 or 3 channels, and
Well, and it's interesting too because like, I mean, I don't really know what Milton Berle's like 40s and 50s stuff was like, but like we all looked at James Corden because we're musical theater people and we have strong opinions about him, but like to even like be at that level or what Rosie was in the 90s, there has to be like a particular softness is not quite the right word, but you know what I mean, right? And there's something even on the Muppet Show, likability,
broad appeal,
niceness, broad appeal, right? Like, and there's something even on the Muppet Show, like a little bit caustic about Milton Berle. It's really interesting to me that like he didn't do well on radio, and like his physicality was a big part of his appeal. Because like I don't think I've ever seen an actor who looked more like a caricature of himself.
True.
Alfred E. Newman.
Yeah, like if you see a portrait of at Sardi's or whatever, like he looks exactly the same. It's not like nothing is exaggerated. We've talked about this before too, like that vaudeville thing. Like he's very, he's very New York. He's very Jewish, frankly. Like there's like it wouldn't work today in the same way, and I'm fascinated by that as something in the monoculture.
I mean, he also, I think, knew how to play to different audiences in a way that would meet them where they're at. And I listened to like an hour-long interview with him that I think was from the 60s that, again, I found on Spotify, where he said something that I think got reworked into dialogue in the show Hacks on HBO Max, where he talked about how he likes to start his act with kind of like a test joke in his monologue. And he sort of feels out his audience to see how smart they are, how dirty they want him to be, and then he adjusts the rest of his act accordingly. And that's really true. Like even just in the stuff that I sampled this week, like some of those Friars Club roasts are really, really filthy. But then you watch him on the Muppet Show or on Batman or on The Nanny or on Kenan and Kel, and he's just like, a friendly fatherly or grandfatherly figure. And he could sort of do everything in between. And I think that's part of what made him really work across a country that, is not, even though it had a monoculture, is not monolithic.
The context is really helpful to me because, even though like we know, and we've talked about this, like the Muppet Show was not being made specifically for kids, even though that's kind of how we think about it now. Like something about Milton Berle felt like such a throwback watching it, like this vaudeville star, this 50s TV star, in a way that no other guest has really read that way to me. Like Zero Mostel was literally about to die, but he was like a current Broadway star. But Milton Berle felt, watching it to me, much more out of place on what I know is not really, but what reads as a kid's show. Like, who is this for? This star from 20 years earlier, but he's not really, because he really did stay current for all of that time. So that's actually really helpful to understand about how this would have played in 77. So Christy, what did you think of this episode overall?
Well, if I take off the Yay Season 2 goggles, this episode is solid. Not a favorite, just solid. I mean, I was thrilled to see Pigs in Space. Pigs in Space is a particular favorite of mine. And I also think that Milton Berle fits in with the Muppets in a way that is reminiscent of how Phyllis Diller fit in with the Muppets. Like, he sort of meets them where they live, and there's like not any sort of like pretense or hesitation. It's just like, oh, we're here. You're who I'm working with today. Great, let's do it. And in a lot of ways, this episode is very deeply weird, and we'll definitely get into it. But Yeah, it's solid. It's fun. It's not the best, but it's a good time.
David?
Yeah, same. This is an episode that feels like it's slightly less than the sum of its parts because I really like most of the parts, but without getting too far ahead of ourselves, the back-to-back renditions of a song that we've already heard in the Phyllis Diller episode was super weird. It just totally derailed the episode for me. I think if you remove that, and also I really don't like the monster song, what's left, I think, is a really great episode.
It's funny for me. It's more than the sum of its parts because you're gonna hear me not dislike a lot of these parts, but I came away from it actually really happy. And having not been thrilled about the first two episodes of the season, this one ended, and I was like, I really enjoyed that. And it's certainly, if we weren't doing a podcast about it and I had only watched it once, I would have definitely felt that way. The close watch that we do for this sent me to some places. We'll get into it. Mikhail, how about you?
Yeah, similar. I would have expected myself to have warmer feelings about this episode, given how many of the individual elements of it I enjoyed. The ugly song and the way Miss Piggy shakes her thing in The Entertainer, and even Milton Berle speak singing. It grew on me on the second watch. There's plenty of content in here that really pretty much has my name written on it. They have a finale that's full of goofy, terrible puns, and I love every single one of them, and it's the debut of Pigs in Space. There's plenty that I enjoyed about this episode, but put it all together and it kind of dragged itself down, and I think it's having The Entertainer right in the middle of it twice in a row. So it's a solid episode, but it's not going to be one of my favorites.
20 seconds to curtain. Stand by for makeup.
Stand by for what?
At which point Timmy Monster yells, "Makeup!" and smacks him with a giant powder puff, which is funny. And Milton Berle's reaction is funny and overblown. It was already a Milton Berle running gag that he had been using in his show. David, what was the link that you sent us? Like the original Milton Berle enormous oversized powder puff.
Yeah, I found an auction house that had auctioned off one of his powder puffs from his show from this running gag that went for thousands of dollars.
Yikes.
Just in case you want to smack your friends in the face with Milton Berle's face.
Gross.
Moving on to the Yay correspondent. Anything there?
So I clipped this for another reason, but have we had a hi-ho before? Is this our first hi-ho this episode?
Surely it's happened at least on Sesame Street, but I don't know about on The Muppet Show.
Okay, well, I mostly... So we talked about this before, and this week is especially egregious. So the opening number is I think never so far the guest. But Kermit will often come out on stage and talk about what a great guest is coming up and then introduce something else entirely. And this is like his worst segue yet, but it also features what might be our first hi-ho.
Thank you. Hi-ho. And here we go again with another edition of The Muppet Show. Tonight's a special one for us because our guest star is one of the truly great comedians, Milton Berle. Mm-hmm. So now for tonight's opening number, here he is, one of the beautiful people.
Not Milton Berle. Like, it's so weird. I don't understand.
Yeah, it never quite does make sense.
Hi-ho.
Hi-ho. Here we are. Yes, we've got Statler and Waldorf, another show, another headache, and we've got Gonzo's bugle or trumpet or what have you. It sprays water all over the Muppet Show sign, and Gonzo looks kind of impressed with the job he did.
I have two things I want to say about that. First is that on my TV, I am pretty sure that the water is like mixed with milk or something to make it more visible in the joke, which is probably great on a 1970s tube TV and absolutely disgusting on a 2021 high-def TV.
Okay, I'm glad it wasn't just me because like when I really paid attention, I was like, oh God, what is that?
Yeah.
Make it stop.
I skipped seeing the Happy Town, Funky Town for a reason.
And then this week, I finally got around to rewatching Muppets Most Wanted, where they restaged the opening number a few times. And in that, it is very clear that Gonzo is using a trumpet and not a bugle. You can see the valves. So I think going forward, we can at least safely assume that at some point he's playing a trumpet. So if we want to just say trumpet instead of trumpet bugle, I feel like we have validated that choice.
Yeah. It's a representation of a trumpet, even if it's not a full-blown trumpet.
During season 1, we talked a lot about the DVDs because it's how I was watching the show most of the time, because they had the pop-up trivia that was super useful. And the menus on those DVDs have this horrible music loop that is not the Muppet Show theme for some reason.
Is it?
It's really weird, and it's like you have the rights to the music. I don't understand why you're not just using the music. But it opens with this trumpet blast, which I'm almost positive is this like waterlogged trumpet note.
Oh no!
Which now
season
makes
1 DVDs too.
Yeah, which now makes it even weirder that they like cut together this music using a clip of the actual Muppet Show,
but also from a different season than was on that DVD.
Yes. I don't understand, but like every time I heard it prepping for this episode, I was like, it's the menu music. It's the menu music. Make it stop. So
Those menus are like so bad because in addition to the music loop, there's also like looping Muppet telling jokes.
Yeah, it's like Statler and Waldorf, and the voices are bad, and it's
just
berating you for watching them instead of choosing an episode.
Younger people who are listening to our podcast, there was a period where DVD menus, like fun DVD menus, were a thing.
They had Easter eggs. They had like
fun
hidden selections. It was terrible,
and they just loop endlessly, and they're just awful. Yeah. And I'm glad that period is behind us.
Navigation was unwieldy. That's in the past.
Anyway,
all navigation is fine now. Anyway,
they fully have solved that problem. HBO Max. Okay.
The Muppet Show backstage.
Here's the whole backstage plot. Fozzie is hiding from Milton Berle. That's the whole shtick. He doesn't want to be found. He tries disguises. He tries hiding behind things. He is reluctant to meet his idol because what would he say?
Fozzie?
Yeah.
Oh, what are you doing?
I'm hiding from Milton Berle.
Hiding from Milton Berle, but he's your idol. Don't you want to meet him?
Meet him? Why do you think I'm hiding, Kermit? What could this lowly bear say to the king of comics?
How about hello?
Hello? I just couldn't say hello. No, I'd have to make a little speech and grovel a lot.
Well, whatever you say, but I think there's one thing you should know about Milton Berle.
What?
He's coming down the stairs.
Ah!
The way he says grovel is so cute. And hello.
I also love his little costume outfit. He's got like this very elaborate like green witch mask that he's holding in front of his face.
Yeah, he's got like this paper mache mask and a sequined, very much not inconspicuous cape.
Right. Well, both of his disguises feel like he went into costume stock and grabbed them, which I also love about it. Like It feels very real.
Except they don't look like anything that you would ever see on the Muppet Show.
Well, no, but Hilda's gone, so it's chaos. So, I buy it.
Yeah, I did wonder, like, who was tasked with making that mask, and how, they spent a long time on it. That's like,
right, and it's Muppet-sized, right? So it's not like they just went out and bought it.
Although it's oversized on Fozzie, so maybe they did buy it. Anyway, he tries to hide in plain sight with another disguise.
What does it look like, small boy I have never seen before?
Well, it looks like Fozzie Bear trying to hide from Milton Berle.
You have penetrated my disguise.
Oh, Fozzie. Oh, Fozzie, why don't you just go up to Milton Berle and introduce yourself?
Oh, I just couldn't do that, Scooter.
Well, I see your point. Milton's monologue was terrific.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he's much funnier than you are. If you really want to know the truth.
I don't. What's wrong with old-fashioned lying?
There are two visual bits that I love that happen during this clip where Fozzie is holding his squishy clown nose that he's been wearing over his original nose, which is basically a clown nose. He's got like 2 layers of foam that have been on his face. And the other thing that I couldn't stop looking at is the back of Scooter's eyeballs. That when he's looking at Fozzie and away from us, the back of his glasses are very clear, which is a weird little thing to look out for.
Scooter and Gonzo both get a little mean in this episode. We'll get to Gonzo later, but in ways that just delight me.
I mean, Scooter's always a little mean.
Scooter's always a little bit undermining, it's true.
Yeah, but unwittingly, he's just kind of an idiot about interpersonal interactions. All of Fozzie's hiding goes out the window when he overhears Milton Berle looking for Fozzie because he actually wants to do a musical number with him.
You, a song and dance with me? You, the king of the baggy pants comics? You,
How about Top Banana?
What?
Top Banana.
Listen, Mr. Berle, if you want me to call you a banana, I'll do it. I'll call you a Brussels sprout, a plum, whatever. I'll do it.
No, kid. You see, Top Banana is what they call the head comic back in the days of burlesque.
Ah.
Well, let me tell you.
So they bust out singing Top Banana, which we will get to.
How did Fozzie learn the song so quickly?
I mean...
Oh, hush. He also learned all the jokes.
They had a very well-rehearsed number that they just put on with no rehearsal. We'll get to the musical aspects of Top Banana in a bit, but in the middle of the song, they cut into all these really tired but really wonderful, terrible gags where Milton Berle keeps walking across the stage carrying assorted things like a crate, and he says he's taking his case to court. He walks the other way, or maybe it's the same way again, I don't remember. Has the same crate and a ladder, and he says he's taking his case to a higher court. And then here's my favorite thing on the whole episode. He walks on holding just a clothes hanger and crying.
Do we have to do this, Joe?
You gotta do it.
It's an oldie, pal.
I know. Do it.
You got a lot of guts, pal, I'll tell you that.
Go do it.
Feed me once more, please. Feed me.
Hey, what happened in court?
Are you ready? I lost the suit.
I was just relieved that I wasn't another wire for Mr. Bear.
It's too fancy a clothes hanger for that sort of thing. It wasn't even a wire hanger. It was like a nice wooden hanger that he stole from a hotel.
I was expecting a hung jury joke, but...
Yeah, I was too, actually.
And that's what makes him...
the king of comedy.
I love this backstage plot so much. It is a perfect example of my philosophy as far as like meeting your heroes. I don't believe don't meet your heroes. I believe in meeting your heroes if they want to meet you.
That's a nice way to put it.
And if they want to tell a bunch of terrible jokes with you, then run on stage and do it.
Exactly.
And I do love how like Fozzie's been so painfully shy the whole episode. He's been trying to hide. And then as soon as he has an opportunity to entertain with Milton Berle, he just transforms in a matter of seconds. It's nice.
Also, Gonzo has eyelids.
Yes. And Gonzo deploys his brand new eyelid mechanism at Milton Berle to cast aspersions on whether he will be successful in his stand-up.
I'm so focused on Gonzo coming into his own this season, and particularly the next episode, which I know we're all dreading because none of us are excited about Rich Little, but I am excited that it's a Gonzo-focused story. And so I'm just I'm keeping the faith with Gonzo.
It's taken him a while to get there, but he is coming into his own. There's also a running gag about Statler and Waldorf where their hearing aids aren't working. That is what it is.
Yeah.
No, if we must, we must. Yeah, so we have one terrible song, one song twice, and some other songs. Yeah, so our opening number, which comes after the strange segue, in which we think we're going to get a Milton Berle bit, and then we don't, is quite literally ugly.
He's not the prettiest to be found. He's a useful and happy reptile.
I'll gobble up anyone left lying around, and that gives me my permanent smile.
He's ugly as sin. But beautiful's out ugly's in.
Yeah.
Sure makes you appreciate the gingerbread men, doesn't it?
No. No, we'll get to what does, but it wasn't these guys. These guys are cute.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame the Muppets themselves here. It's just okay. So it's a song called "Ugly Song" by Paul Tracy, who was primarily an actor. and a theater actor. He appeared on Broadway in The Boyfriend with Sandy Duncan.
Hey.
Yeah, and in The Rothschilds with Hal Linden and Jill Clayburgh. And he was also in not the original West End Company of Company, but the replacement Company of Company. He was not the lead. He played David. I looked it up. And he had started writing songs on the side and put out an album of songs. And this was one of them. And he actually ended up with 4 songs on The Muppet Show over the course of season 2 and season 3. So we'll get to talk about them and him more. But interestingly, he had actually met with Jim Henson and had written songs specifically for The Muppet Show that did not get used. Sad for him.
I did not like this song.
No, I didn't either.
And when I say I don't really mean it made me appreciate the Gingerbread Man. It made me appreciate the Gingerbread song.
Oh, I love the Gingerbread song. I hate the Gingerbread Man.
But what I really hated is that the song relies on misdressed lyrics, and the idea that Paul Tracy was in a Stephen Sondheim show not long before this and was able to pass off these incredibly bad misdressed lyrics as a final product just it hurts my soul.
You're singing the song of my people.
I mean, considering the horrible scansion that is yet to come in the next number, I didn't even notice. But like it's fine. I think it's fine as a Muppet number, but it's so badly shot. It's this single shot in this really tight, close framing, and like half the Muppets are like half out of the frame the whole time. I just don't. I understand they're on a budget,
and they had this gimmick where they would transition out of one shot by having it look like the camera is going into the mouth of one Muppet and coming out of the mouth of another Muppet.
Right.
So I guess they had to keep everything tight. It's odd. I wasn't upset by the framing of it overall. I wasn't upset by the song overall. I didn't think it was a great song, but also that's a bunch of monsters and frackles singing about being monsters and frackles. It's fine with me.
No, they're singing about being ugly.
Right. Right.
Fair.
It's the kind of thing, like, again, where like if I just watched it once, it wouldn't have bothered me. But then like I go to make a GIF and I'm like, wait, where? I don't understand where the edge of the frame is. And we've seen so many delightful numbers where it's just a single camera and a blue background and a bunch of frackles, maybe a human in the middle, not really doing anything. And it's totally charming and joyful. And so I was like, I don't understand why this feels so weird and off to me.
Yeah, I've kept thinking back most specifically to the Florence Henderson Happy Together.
Yeah, me too.
Because it looked like almost 201 with the exception of the crocodile, the same motley crew of frackles that were with her. Like they tended to use these sort of like blue and green color coordinated groups as backup singers for a more substantial song. So I sort of was like, this feels rudderless.
I wonder if they pitched this to Milton Berle and he was offended by their suggestion that he be included.
They're like, all right, we'll put Mean Mama in the middle. Milton Berle won't do it.
I don't know. It felt to me like a middle school video project, which obviously in the 70s, no one in middle school was doing video projects. But by the time I was in middle school in the 90s, this is the kind of thing we might have come up with.
To be like, oh, I found a song with a crocodile and a warthog, and I have those puppets, so here they are.
Right, like I have some stuffed animals, and I realize that if I zoom in, I can make it look like I'm going into their mouth, and I press pause and then move them around and zoom out. A+.
Going back to the file of things you might have had to learn for your piano lessons.
Yeah, so remember a couple of episodes when we were like, wow, isn't it funny that we have 2 Michel Legrand, Alan and Marilyn Bergman songs in an episode? Isn't that wild? Boy, do we have the be-all, end-all of that phenomenon. Here we have the same song twice, and not just the same song in this episode, but a song that we've already seen before.
They ran out of songs.
Twice, back to back. But it's not even like they do it and then later on there's a reprise. It's like they do it and then they rewind and just start right back the fuck over.
Yeah, it's not a reprise. It's not an encore. It's just the same song twice.
I don't even. Okay, so these clips are longer than we usually this is where I went insane in prepping this episode. Like, I watched this once and it honestly barely registered. So the song is The Entertainer, not to steal Christy's job, but like, and like, it's such a like, the song is just so everywhere. It's like wallpaper. And so like it happened. And then I was like, oh, that's weird. They're doing it again. But like it hardly even registered. And then I started making clips and I sort of lost my mind. And like the more time I spent with it, the more insane I felt. And I need to convey that to you, our listeners. So here's the first clip. It's longer than our usual clips, but like I needed to capture like what is happening. And so much of that is Milton Berle.
The Entertainer, right?
Yeah, that's the name of the song.
You know, most people don't know that there are words to that song.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what they're about? They're about the stars and the performers and the entertainers that appeared during the heyday of vaudeville.
Hey, you used to be in vaudeville, didn't you?
Yeah, sure I was. When I was a kid.
Yeah. How many performances did you do in vaudeville?
Oh, I'd say between 80,000 and 100,000.
Wow. You were really the entertainer, weren't you?
One of them, yeah. Many fond memories. Now the curtain is gone up. The Entertainer is taking a bow. He does his dance step and sings his song. Even gets the audience to sing along. Yes, he knows just what to do.
Okay, so if you're still awake, that goes on for a while. And then the Muppets join in.
All the singers, dancers, acrobats, and clowns.
There was a dancing bear,
Even a dog act there.
And a comedian who never let him down.
But when he came on to do his favorite song, he really wowed them in the cities and the towns. They came from near and far to see the vaudeville star, the Entertainer.
No.
Now the curtain is going down on the entertainer, the artist, the pro.
So
That's enough of that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Too much of that.
the reason that most people don't realize that there are words to the song is there kind of aren't.
There shouldn't be.
So, as best as I could determine, these lyrics were added in 1974 by an arranger named John Brimhall, not for like a recording of the song or a performance of the song. No, for beginner piano books. So, at this point, 1974 is post the success of The Sting. So, like, Scott Joplin and this piece of music in particular are having a moment. This was just in a beginner piano book somewhere.
And I learned piano in the 80s. I either learned from a Brimhall book or these lyrics ended up in other easy piano books too, because the lyrics were definitely familiar to me. And I'm sure that's where I knew them from.
Or from this episode of The Muppet Show.
Yeah,
maybe, but I can sort of picture them on a page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they didn't sound unfamiliar to me, but similarly, I was like, I do vaguely remember seeing these in a piano book at some point. But I mean, the song was in the public domain by this point. So, I mean, it makes sense that somebody would capitalize on it in a really unfortunate way.
There's an absolutely bonkers discussion about this on the talk page of the Wikipedia entry for this song, because there's just not enough consensus that John Brimhall is the person who wrote these lyrics. And so there's just like sniping back and forth between Wikipedia editors about whether or not this belongs on the page at all. It's very entertaining if you're into that sort of thing.
If you're going to the entertainer page for entertainment.
Yeah, there is actually some entertainment to be found that has nothing to do with John Brimhall. I found an absolute gem I have to just read this to you. It says, in the June 7th, 1903 St. Louis Globe Democrat, contemporary composer Monroe H. Rosenfeld described the entertainer as the best and most euphonious of Joplin's compositions to that point. It is a jingling work of a very original character, embracing various strains of a retentive character which set the foot in spontaneous action and leave an indelible imprint on the tympanum. That just
I
sounded like,
couldn't say it better myself.
Who among us?
just sounded like dialogue from The Music Man. I was like,
Okay, so back to the Muppets. The only thing I like about this is when Milton Berle was like, hey, that's the entertainer, there's a real you dumbass quality to Ralph's delivery of, yeah, that's the name of the song, which I really appreciate. But then, like, everything else about it, like, if you're not watching along with us, please go to the show notes and look at this bizarre assortment of characters. I mean, it's Fozzie and Scooter and Rolf, obviously. There is like some sort of showgirl whatnot Muppet, and I don't like, where did she come from? I get like sort of like Old West saloon girl from her costume and wig. I don't know what's happening. There is a clown with stars for eyes, which is fucking terrifying. And it keeps looking at people.
That dead clown kind of kills it.
It's not, and I'm like not a like knee jerk afraid of clowns person. It's so fucking creepy. And then like the whole, like the way that the Muppets like burst into it and then come back, it's like Milton Berle is like dying. His whole delivery is so laconic, and then like the Muppets have this like burst of energy and then are gone, like he's having some sort of fit, like it's all happening in his brain. Or maybe this is what's happening to me right now. I don't know.
This very much has that like in memoriam for yourself quality.
Yeah.
I saw in the Twiggy episode.
It's like the end of All That Jazz, and it's like he's having this final burst of entertainment, and then it's gone, and it goes back to the like funerary delivery. I don't know. It's so fucking bizarre.
Before you die, you see the clown.
It's also weird because Milton Berle can sing. He's just choosing not to here. Like, he's not a great singer, but like he sings in Top Banana. He sang during his career. He like recorded songs. Like he could have sung this instead of just sort of reciting it like a dirge. I don't know.
Yeah, it did. I didn't have as much of a problem with it as Adam did, but I did once we got to Top Banana later in the episode, and I discovered that, oh, he does sing. Wait, why didn't they just have him sing? I was assuming that he was speak singing because he could not or would not sing. So yeah, the somber speak singing remains mysterious.
I just want to say, this clown that you hate so much, this is not the first time we've seen that clown. You actually loved him quite a bit, or her, it, them.
Let's go with it for this clown.
I don't think I understand that we've seen them before, but did I love it?
Yeah, I think if we roll the tape from the Joel Grey episode, we call out the appearance of the clown in Comedy Tonight as a highlight of that number.
That doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right at all.
I did. I'll own it.
Okay, but also like
I secretly love the clown, but I love the clown because
fair.
the clown is weird.
But also like the staging of that number versus the staging of this number, like in this, the clown is like downstage center in a group sing. And then it like turns to look at Milton Berle with its dead star eyes. It's very different from like the frantic energy of Comedy Tonight, where I'm sure I didn't notice its dead star eyes.
Yeah, it's much more visible for much longer here. All the characters in Comedy Tonight, the way they pop in and out, it's like a blink and you miss it kind of thing. So if you watch it a second time and you spot a weird clown, or you discover characters you didn't even know were in the number, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
In Comedy Tonight, all it does is go, ah!
And there are Muppet clowns ahead in our journey that I am very much looking forward to. Like I am not, I'm not anti-clown. It's just those eyes.
So deeper down the rabbit hole we go with our UK spot, which is second verse, same as the first, except this time Ralph is still at the piano. And in comes Piggy.
I did not realize this was the UK spot. And not that it excuses it, but at least explains it a little bit.
A little bit. Still fucking
And I think you're right that maybe that means that it would have been separated by a commercial. I don't know if that does or doesn't mean that. But at least it means that in the United States, we only got the worst version of the song.
I guess.
I mean, it would make a little more sense if you come back from commercial and Ralph is still at the piano, everybody else has gone home, and he's just kind of staring forlornly into space.
Right. Well, he is doing that, and Piggy comes on and literally says, "Hey, Ralph, can you play that song again?" And he does.
The entertainer, the star of the show. Put something in it, Ralph.
He's a born him.
I literally thought that they'd forgotten to do a UK spot, and we're like, well, we have the track, but it's not the same track. It's a totally different arrangement.
Oh. Yeah, for as utterly batshit as this is, I sort of love it. Like, I love
This is
Piggy's,
definitely
like,
better than the previous Entertainer.
Oh, yeah.
It is more
Yeah.
entertaining than the previous iteration of the entertainer, yes.
Yeah, Piggy's like practically twerking. She's like shimmying all over the piano.
It's always really fun to see Jim Henson and Frank Oz together, and we don't get to see Ralph and Piggy together in this way very often, in the way that we see Kermit and Piggy together, or Kermit and Fozzie. So I found this fun for that reason, but I don't understand why we're hearing the same song again immediately. I found it maddening.
I also noticed that when Piggy comes in, she calls him Ralphie, which is a thing that like she does also in The Muppets Take Manhattan, and I don't know that I have ever heard her do that any other place. So I'm not quite sure what that's about, but it's a fun time. She actually does it in the clip that we discussed in my episode of the Moving Right Along podcast.
Oh,
It's fun that she becomes a character here almost. She is definitely herself. She's definitely Miss Piggy, the way she's throwing herself onto the piano and shaking everything she's got just for the sake of entertaining. But it seems like this is a little bit more of Miss Piggy just trying to sell the song, or maybe even be a little flirty, getting right up next to Ralph at the piano and kicking him out of a couple of octaves so she can play the piano too.
she's making Kermit jealous. That's what she's doing.
It made me
Oh.
wish that this iteration of Piggy could time travel and do a number with Lizzo. This had big Lizzo energy.
Ooh. She lets it all hang out there. She shows so much that at one point Ralph covers his eyes in addition to saying hubba hubba. But at some point she's shimmying so hard that Ralph looks and then covers his eyes because he can't handle it, but then immediately uncovers his eyes and looks again.
All right, so we have two more numbers after this. Thankfully, neither of them are the entertainer. Our next number involves an owl.
Ooh. Spurn my heart away. Ooh. Makes me dream all day. Dreams I knew can never be true. Seems as though I'll never be blue. Ooh. Means my happiness. Ooh.
So yes, this is Zelda Rose and her singing owl. Zelda Rose being the librarian we saw in the library sketch in the Mummenschanz episode, and also the teacher that we saw in silhouette in the inchworm number in the Charles Aznavour episode. And this is we had mentioned previously that there were various appearances of female performers auditioning to be on the show. This is the second instance of that. Zelda Rose is performed here by Abby Hadfield. And this number was recorded for one of the albums later, but re-recorded with Louise Gold. So,
Which is why it sounds so off-putting to hear this version, because I've heard the Louise Gold version many times.
it's a very funny voice, though. I
Sure.
enjoy this. It's from a musical called Sunny from 1925. Jerome Kern wrote the music, and the lyrics were by Otto Harbach and Oscar Hammerstein. And Sunny, there were two movies made of it in 1930 and 1941. And people complain about reboots now.
I've watched both of those movies in the last year.
I had a feeling you might have.
Yeah, I've been going through this discovering and rediscovering the movie musicals of the 30s through the 50s. And Marilyn Miller was like enormous stage star of the 20s. In fact, there's a statue of her on the outside of the building where I work. But because she only made a couple movies and they're from this like very primitive era of motion pictures, most people don't really have a sense of what she was like. So it was a treat to get to see her.
Just imagine if they had done this number with the owl and the star-eyed clown.
Well, the owl's eyes start out closed, and I sort of had a similar moment of like, what is this creepy owl? And then it opened his eyes. I was like, oh no, okay, it's cute. It's fine.
It is.
It's totally cute. But at first I like thought something was wrong with its eyes. The Zelda puppet, is this the first time it gets a name?
Yeah.
Like, I know we know its name because we have the internet, but like
Her name.
yes, sorry. But the puppet is funny because she has a very small mouth and a very tall head. And so when she sings, like it's almost like the top of her head tips back instead of the bottom of her mouth opening, which is how it should work.
It is cute. And I like the little pinched mouth. And I feel like the little pinched delivery that Abby Hadfield does here, even though it's not the Zelda Rose that I'm used to, I think it fits and it's fun and bizarre.
Yeah.
I would also be remiss if we moved on without mentioning that this is the one song this episode that was recorded at one point by noted Joe Raposo San Frank Sinatra.
Although the more famous version, I think, these days is Judy Garland also recorded it. She played Marilyn Miller in the Jerome Kern biopic Till the Clouds Roll By.
I'm going to have to listen to those because I don't know how to do this without an owl.
Or why you'd want to.
Right. As far as I'm aware, this is written for human and owl.
So last but not least, Fozzie gets to have his big, lovely moment with Milton Berle.
You wanna be the top banana, you gotta start from the bottom of the bun.
You gotta know the joke about the farmer's daughter.
Then take it in the kisser with the soda water.
If you wanna be a burlesque comic,
It's basic training for you to take a punch. You gotta roll your eyes and make a funny face and do a take and holler.
this must be the place.
If you wanna be the top banana, you gotta start from the bottom up.
So this is Top Banana from a musical called Top Banana from 1951, written by Johnny Mercer, or as Muppet Wiki strangely refers to him, John H. Mercer. No, sir, that's my father.
Mercer, I hardly know her. Sorry.
Yeah, just like...
I've never mersed. Sorry.
I mean, like, that's what you say when you stub your toe. Oh, John H. Mercer. So Top Banana was a musical that was a star vehicle for Phil Silvers, and it was based on Milton Berle. In this very meta way, Milton Berle is singing a song written for a character based on him. That's weird and delightful. And speaking of also Muppet Show meta, in the show, it's preceded by the banana sketch.
Top Banana was one of the first Broadway musicals, I think, that was like filmed on stage and then released as a film. So we'll put a clip in the show notes so you can watch them do the banana sketch into this song. This was delightful. We talked about it earlier. I don't know that there's a whole lot more to say. It's funny because Top Banana as a whole is not a show or a score that I think very highly of, but the number done this way, just it works so perfectly for who Milton Berle is and who Fozzie Bear is and who they are together.
Never mind that jazz. Listen, Turkey.
What? And get out of show business?
All right, let's talk about some of our sketches. So Milton Berle has a comedy monologue, which we've heard Scooter talk about as having been very successful, but we can hear that this is not the case because Statler and Waldorf are in rare form.
Just a minute, please. I have been a successful comedian half of my life.
How come we got this half?
Look, did you come in here to be entertained or not?
That's right.
What's right?
We came in here to be entertained, and we're not.
Oh, yeah? I'd like to see you come down here and be funny.
You first.
So I know Statler and Waldorf are expected to heckle and torment Fozzie every single week, but they're just being very inhospitable. and it's not very nice. And Milton Berle smiles at the audience at the end, like he knows that this is all an act, but he does look very upset, which is, very unnerving.
I mean, this was also a bit that he was famous for. Like, he did this with hecklers both planted and not throughout his career. Like, this is what his joke file was so well suited to prepare him to do. So, I think we're just seeing him do what he does and do it so well. This to me was the highlight of the episode. I was laughing out loud the entire time.
I mean, they were very funny, but also just, I was cringing because, he's a guest. We should be nicer to our guests.
It is maybe a step too far when Gonzo comes out on stage.
How's it going, Mr. Berle?
Oh, I'm going to start with you now. How's it going? It's going terribly. It's these guys have been picking on me, insulting me ever since I started.
Well, can I help you out?
Please, huh?
Which way did you come in?
He's just trying to help.
It did make me laugh out loud every time. But Gonzo, you work there.
I also want to shout out, we've talked about this before, but every so often they'll do a shot like of the guest star, like from the wings, like, or in this particular episode, it's more of a kind of like a Milton Berle's eye view shot of Statler and Waldorf. And it's just really terrific.
Yeah, I was really curious actually about, like, in all the front on shots of him, like, what, if anything, is he seeing and hearing? Because, like, the Muppet Theater is not real. Like, I assume he's not. I assume, like, he's not actually standing on a stage and can't actually, like, there's no box there and then there's no puppets. Like, someone's probably doing Statler and Waldorf's lines, but there's no puppets. But then they do those reverse shots where the box is there, and they're great. And I don't know if they were chroma keyed together or if that's actually a possible setup.
Chroma keyed together.
Yeah. It fooled me enough that I couldn't quite tell, and everyone sold it really well. I really liked it.
I don't know if it's just like trained my eyes from doing the show, but around the time that we are recording this, there was also that Wicked in Concert special on PBS, which I did not watch in full because I love myself too much. But I did watch a clip online of Amber Riley doing Defying Gravity, where she was also chroma keyed onto a stage in front of an orchestra that was definitely not in the same time and place that she was. And I would say that this Milton Berle, Statler, and Waldorf technology was as good, if not better, than what we saw on this weird Amber Riley.
Agreed.
People took more pride in their work then.
Milton Berle calls Statler and Waldorf Starsky and Crutch, which is a okay joke, but I noticed it because Bruce Forsyth also referred to Starsky and Hutch, and I just find it weird. This is the one piece of media that exists outside the Muppet Theater.
Was Starsky and Hutch like an international phenomenon, and that's why they felt safe referencing it?
In the United Kingdom, the series was an immediate hit when it began showing on Saturday nights on BBC One, debuting 23 April 1976, and soon catching up with U.S. broadcasts. So, yes, your theory is solid.
So that's why.
Let's talk about Muppet News Flash. There's not much to talk about in the Muppet News Flash. There's a fight over an inheritance, which doesn't exactly seem like it ought to make the news, but anyway, this woman's son wins against her cat and is awarded with 10,000 rubber mice. That's Muppet News Flash. I don't have anything else there.
No.
Yeah, that is all. Moving on, it's the debut of Pigs in Space, but it's not quite the debut of Jerry Nelson's announcer voice. It's coming along.
Featuring the master of the swine trek, the intrepid and well-fed Link Hogthrob. And as first mate and second in command, the very cute and extremely dangerous Miss Piggy. And the super brain behind this whole ghastly mistake, the inexplicable Dr. Julius Strangeport. As you recall, last week the spaceship Swine Trek was on a suicidal collision course with a mysterious celestial object.
I love the tone of these intros. They're always strange and wonderful. And also, even just here in this first one, the look on Miss Piggy's face when it swishes by the camera, she does this kind of smiling grimace thing. It's wonderful.
It's so good. I was really struck by this intro. I've always thought of Pigs in Space as mostly a Star Trek parody, which it obviously is. But this is such a, like, so clearly like a 50s, maybe even 40s science fiction serial throwback. And it's great. It just like struck me as like a whole nother genre before we get to the Star Trek parody. And then like Link Hogthrob is, shattering all over the place. I love it.
I too would like to be described as very cute and extremely dangerous.
Oh,
Sure,
yeah.
who wouldn't?
Do you not know that that's how I describe you all the time?
Yeah.
Aww.
In this chapter of Pigs in Space, the Swine Trek crew sees a white light heading their way, which turns out to be just Gonzo on a motorcycle hurtling through space in his little tuxedo. And he swerves away just in time, so they're saved. The end.
I feel like the appearance of Gonzo here really echoes nicely with the plot of Muppets from Space.
That's where he came from. He came from space on a motorcycle.
I wonder if, I know we've talked about this throughout the first season about whether some of these segments were scripted sort of independently from the episode and then mixed and matched, but it feels like it would have made sense for this to be paired with an episode where Gonzo does a stunt on a motorcycle and like flies off the stage. And I wonder if we will see such a stunt later in the season and think, that Pigs in Space episode should have gone here.
We'll find out.
Or maybe it was in the writing of this Pigs in Space that gave them the idea that later on Gonzo should do a motorcycle.
They thought he
stunt.
looked so cute on a motorcycle. Let's put him on one again.
I was very distracted in this by the decal on Piggy's uniform being like half detached. I was so worried it was just going to fall off.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think there's a penalty aboard the Swine Trek for your uniform being out of line?
Very lax military structure on the Swine Trek.
It's also unclear if there's any other crew besides the three of them.
Yeah.
And the ship seems very small.
The chain of command is not really clear either. I mean, we know who the captain is, but we also know that he's useless.
This segment ends with Jerry Nelson announcing, tune in next week for last week's chapter of Pigs in Space. And that struck me as particularly funny, given that this series, meaning The Muppet Show, not Pigs in Space, is one where the episodes were shown in different orders in every market where it played. And I wonder if the writers were a little bit like airing some frustration about that with this line.
Possibly. I don't know. What stories do you think they were itching to tell that they couldn't do because there was no order?
Well, it's not so much that there were stories that they couldn't do, but like, in the first season, for example, we had the example of Scooter possibly appearing and then a week later being introduced, and the same thing with Uncle Deadly. And I can see that being like at least a little annoying to writers.
Yeah. More so.
It was a little annoying to
more
viewers.
More so at the beginning of the series. It's like, oh, let's meet Scooter when we've met Scooter, but maybe less relevant by the second season.
But also we aren't watching in the order that they aired, unless maybe some market aired them in this order. We don't know. So I don't even know if that's true, if that's accurate. Maybe they did see them in the right order. All I know is that if Pigs in Space is meant to be serialized, you can't do serialized drama / comedy if you don't know what order your episodes are going to be in.
True enough.
This brings us to the end of the episode. Does anyone have final thoughts about the Milton Berle episode?
Another show, another headache.
I gave my award for best line of the week to I Lost the Suit because I love it so much. And the Muppet Horror is a clown with stars for eyes. But also in The Entertainer, Lydia the Tattooed Lady is standing in the back. And she's always my favorite. So that's my favorite Muppet of the week. Lydia, she's there. If you want to find her, you got to watch The Entertainer again.
I was happy to see her. It did not make up for that number. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Muppet Turkey. We'll be back next week. Tear into the rich little episode you don't want to miss.
You might.
You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Muppet Turkey or on the web at MuppetTurkey.com. Tell your friends about this podcast. We'd love to have more listeners. Our theme music was composed and performed by Christy Bauer. Our show logo was created by Tom Brian Backus. This episode was edited by me, David. We're definitely
Thanks,
not
Gonzo.
using that take. We're definitely using the first chaotic take.
Hey, man. It's your artistic choices to make.
Yo, Ghost rules! What do you know about great art?